Welcome to today's live stream. Today we're going to be going through one of the CompTIA Cloud Plus labs. We're doing Lab 3, which is the Managing Compute Resources in AWS. So we're working through that. And if you have any questions throughout the live stream, please let me know. Be happy to answer them with this or any type of, or any question, even if it's outside the course. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're doing Assisted Lab 3, Managing Compute Resources in AWS. With this lab, we're going to be working with Elastic Block Store volumes, and we're going to do Elastic Compute Cloud instances. Okay, so when we instantiate an EC2 instance, we're going to be using that storage volume to hold an operating system. So basically, we're creating like a containerized environment. And the device in that instance known as the instance store. Okay, we could set the device size, the type of device, the volume. And the volume is what's known as an ephemeral volume. It only persists while the instance is running or booted. So this means that any data stored in the instance will be lost if the instance is stopped, hibernated, or terminated. That's the characteristics of an ephemeral drive. A drive only exists for the life, for how long it's necessary to be alive. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to work through, and we're going to add a EC2 instance here, and we're going to be setting this up. So let's go ahead, go through the steps here. Remember, your steps are going to be on the right side or left side, however you want to arrange this. And if you want to work ahead, you can check the checkbox, and it'll help guide you through each of these steps. So if you want to follow along with your own lab, if you're working through the labs yourself, that's perfectly fine. If not, it's more than adequate just to watch the video. Okay, so we've already been signed into the AWS console. We're going to go to console home, okay? And we're going to have a service member. We can click the services pop-up menu, and we're going to go down to our different services here. We have our compute functions, all sorts of content. Now, let's see. Let's just give us some extra information here. We want to make sure we're in the Northern Virginia availability zone, which we are, and then we're good to go. We can hit EC2. I already have EC2 up, okay, and this is the EC2 dashboard. Then we're going to go to instances. We're going to select instances. And we should see a single instance running, and we do. Dev department server 1, and that is running there. Now we can select the instance ID. We can select this to see the details of our instance. We can select the storage tab. We have a bunch of different tabs here: security, networking, storage, status checks, monitoring, and tags. So let's go ahead and check that storage tab. And we'll see the instance only has one attached storage device. And we see that there. Device name is /dev/xvda. Okay. Probably stands for virtual disk attachment. Okay, what of the following does not appear on the monitoring page when viewing device metrics? Let's see. In the monitoring tab, we can see CPU utilization, status check, network packets, disk reads, disk writes. So we have reads, we have writes, CPU credits. We have that. Network in bytes. Network packets. We have network packets. Network in bytes. I mean, this one is going to be the one that, this is a pretty tricky question. What they're asking here. Here, let me show you guys. They're asking disk writes, disk reads, CPU credits used, or network in bytes. Now, the only one, the correct answer is CPU credits used, though it does tell us CPU credits usage, or CPU credit usage. You have to pay attention to those little details. So CPU credits used is not exactly what's listed here. And some of the questions are going to be very nuanced like that on the exam. So you do have to pay attention to those. I know that's kind of like a gotcha question, but unfortunately those exist on the exam. Okay, so now we're going to select volumes from the Elastic Block Store section. So let's go ahead and select volumes, Elastic Block Store and volumes. And we have our volume here. We're going to check that checkbox, expand this window here. And we're going to hit create volume. Okay. So at the top, we're going to hit create volume. We're going to create a volume here. We have different types of volumes here. We have general purpose solid state drive with different types, provision, IOPS, solid state drive, hard disk drive, throughput optimized hard disk drive, or magnetic drive. These are the types of volumes you can see. Now we're going to configure it using these settings. Most of these are going to be pretty standard. All of this is standard. And we're going to add a tag. Now, if you're familiar with these labs by now, you get an idea of what we're going to be using here. Environment, and then dev. Add a tag. Business unit. Dev department. Make sure the capitalization is correct. Add a tag, name, data 1. Okay. Double check that's correct. Looks good. Then we're going to go ahead and create volume. We're creating that volume. And we're going to wait to see when that's created. The volume state is creating right now. Now we should see a, oh, here we go. Successfully created volume. Let's go ahead and refresh this. If we refresh this, the state should be available. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to select that new volume. We're going to view its properties here. If you need help, you can check that. And then it's going to ask us a question here. So in addition to GP2, which of the following are valid volume types for an EBS volume? So we can select different types here, score that, and then we can see if you get trouble with that, you can look at volume type. Okay. If we want to gain a little more insight onto how that works. But I do invite you trying these out, and don't worry if you get a couple answers wrong. That's perfectly fine. You can always go back and try it. And we're going to go ahead and score this, make sure that the volume has been created. Okay. And I do invite you to just play around here, take a look at these different metrics. Again, you're not going to break this environment. Here's all those keys we made, those tags, with the key and then the value for each of these. Now this, you may be wondering, why are we doing these steps? You know, we're only creating one volume at a time. Now this becomes more important when you start managing hundreds of volumes. For example, for your enterprise, you're going to need to have tags, have methods to organize and control your environment to prevent things like VM sprawl, virtual machine sprawl. Okay. So make sure to learn what all of these concepts are as you go through. Okay, because if you don't, then you're just gonna be going through the motions without actually learning anything. Okay. Now, if we want to going back to this question, we could create another volume, or we could just cancel this and look at the different volume types. We have GP2, 3, IO1, IO2, throughput optimized, cold HD, and magnetic. So remember when we talked about those? So right now we have we already have GP2, we have GP3, we have IO1, and then we have That looks like it. So let me go ahead and score that. Anything else I'm missing here? Let's try standard or GP1. Not sure. Oh, SC1. I'm missing SC1. It's right here. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and cancel that. Helps us answer that question. All right, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to attach that EBS volume that we just created onto an instance. Okay. So in our create volume, we're going to select the volume pane that we have here. Actions, attach volume. We're going to select the instance, and we're going to select our server, dev department server 1, which is running. It's the server we have. And we're going to go ahead and click attach volume. Now we see that that's attached to that same server. Okay, so both of these instances, including the one we just created, are attached to that same server. All right. Okay, so now let's see. What's the status EBS volume before and after it's attached in its instance? So we had volume state in use now. Before that was available, so it'd be available and in use. And then verify the EBS volume is properly attached. We can go ahead and score that, and that's going to be properly attached. Now we can modify this. Okay, we've created our data 1 volume. We're going to go to actions, and we're going to modify it. Let's increase the size to 200. We're going to hit modify. Yep, we agree to that. Now, AWS is recommending that we create a snapshot of the volume before we modify it, and creating a snapshot is usually a really good idea. And remember, snapshots are used to back up virtual instances. So by creating a snapshot, we can basically save that machine in a known working state. Then we can make any modifications, publish those modifications, and if there's any sort of error from those modifications, we can always revert back to that known working state using our snapshots, a form of backups. All right, so we click through that. Now we're going to select again this data 1, and let's see, monitoring. We're going to see the details here. Status check, good, monitoring. Okay, now here's the volume state. It's modifying, it's at 0% right now. It's going to take some time to up to 200 instead of 100 gigabytes. Now let's go ahead and refresh, see if this is making any progress. It's almost finished here. Now the size right now reads 200 because we modified it. Let's refresh again. It's going to take just a moment. And let's answer these questions while we're waiting for that. Okay, so what operation is recommended before modifying EBS volume? It's asking to create a snapshot first. Pretty easy question. Verify the size and modify the EBS volume was modified. That's still working, but we'll be able to verify that in just a moment. Okay, now let's go ahead and while that's still working, let's work through the next page. We're going to go ahead and click on the monitoring tab. Okay, and there's lots of different information here. You can modify this, and you can enlarge these metrics. You can view these specific types. You can change the layout of this if you like. There's all sorts of details you can add here. You can add this to the dashboard, your AWS dashboard, if there's a disk that you want to keep your eye on. So very useful information. And let's see. In the table volume, select the original unnamed 8 GB instance volume so that both EBS volumes are selected. So we're going to select both of these, and we're going to compare them essentially. Now let's see. We're going to see the information that AWS captures. Okay. Here's the average queue length. That's not particularly useful. Let's take a look at more interesting here. Write throughput. See how this is modified between volume 1 and volume 2. Right now we have volume 1 mapped in green. Volume 2 is not on there just because that's it should still modifying right now. That's okay though. So basically what this step is having you do is to get familiar with these monitoring steps. Time spent idle, that's a good one to look at. We have volume 1 has been idle for quite some time, basically since we started the instance because we haven't been using it or modifying it. And volume 2 is still modifying, so it hasn't been, it should be in use, so it hasn't been idle this entire time because we've just created it and then we've been modifying it the whole time. Okay. Now I do invite you to take some time, play around with these, look at these, and you can graph these over time. You know, if we obviously as we increase the time, we're going to get very vertical graphs because the instance has only been available for about 20 minutes now. That's all. Okay, and then we do have a question here. Let's see. True or false? In addition to perform metrics, AWS has visibility to the data stored on EBS volumes. In addition to performance metrics, no, that's not true. Besides the performance metrics, AWS doesn't have visibility into the volume to look at the data, but it does have visibility on the metrics themselves, like input, output, throughput to the disk, write times, things of those natures. So everything needed to keep the disk running smoothly, that's available, but the nature of the data, that's not available. Okay, and let's see if that, okay, good. The volume state now is ready for data 1 that we created. So now we should see some comparison graphs here between the two. Now it's going to take a little time for the second volume to have a presence on these graphs. Right now it's just a dot because we just modified the device. But we can start to see that device populate on these graphs here. Okay, good. All right, so now let's answer the review questions. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. You can always reach out at info@cyberkrafttraining.com. And if you're interested in getting your Cloud Plus, we have self-paced, we have bootcamps available. So, it might be a good time to sign up for one of our classes, unless you already have done so. Okay, so in order to be attached to an EC2 instance, an EBS volume must first, be encrypted, be larger than 100 gigabytes, be a volume pipe GP2, or be in the same availability zone. We want to make sure that's in the same availability zone. Okay. You need to have that. The availability zones have to match. Everything else doesn't matter. True or false? The size of an EBS volume. Here, let me just put these questions in the middle of the screen. The size of an EBS volume can be increased but not decreased. That's not true. Size of an EBS, yeah, that is true. In order to create a smaller volume, you're going to need to provision a new drive. Okay, so you can always add resources, but when you take away resources, that's where you have some trouble. So just keep that in mind when you're creating that EBS volume. And then how many EC2 instances can a single EBS volume be attached to at the same time? It should just be one instance. So you can only attach this to one instance at a time. So that's why you're only going to see, you're not going to see different columns here for instances. You're only going to see the option to attach that to one instance. And in this example, we've only attached it. We only have one instance to attach to. So we can't really demonstrate, you know, what it looks like when you try and do that to multiple, but you're not able to. You'd have to detach it from one instance to do anything else. Okay, so let's go ahead and I think we still had to run one script. So let's go ahead. No, those scripts ran, so we're good. Okay, let's go ahead and grade our lab, and we should be all set. So if you've been following along with the lab, great job. If you have any questions, reach out, info@cyberkrafttraining.com. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you in the next lab. Now, if you're interested in Cloud Plus training and getting your Cloud Plus certification, I do recommend our Cloud Plus bootcamps. You know, we have Cloud Plus bootcamps running every month, essentially, and we have self-paced training available too. So, looking forward to helping you get your Cloud Plus. Thanks for watching the video. Have a wonderful day.